How many times have you gone out on stage, counted the first song in too fast? Right? And it takes like 1, 2, or 3 songs before the band settles and starts to feel good, you know? Well, you can't do that. It has to be right from beat 1. So, counting in that first song has to be absolutely bang, you know? But one of the problems with playing music, especially from a drumming point of view, transitions. You start out, you play the intro, and then you do a nice big fill, da-da-da-da-da-da, into a verse. That's called a transition. And then you try and do another transition from the verse to the bridge, or B section. Then another transition from the B section to the chorus. These are all potential danger points, because that's where your tempo will vary, if it's going to vary, and if you're not playing to a click. Right? Let's take the click out of the equation for the moment. So, really, one of the big challenges is to transition smoothly. And if you think about it, most of the time, the drummer is the only person that actually plays into the transition. Because he goes ding, 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 right? Everybody else is ding, 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 ding. They don't really change. You go, they play the downbeat, or an eighth note, or whatever whatever the song is. So it's really the drummer that sets up the next section. And that's why that downbeat's got to be right on. And you know, when you hear younger bands and younger drummers, they do a fill, and the cymbal beats a little bit early, you know, and they're a little up together, and then they kind of come back together, and there's another big fill, and maybe it's a bar of 15/8. It didn't quite make 4/4, you know. That's exaggerating, but these are all transitions, and this is what's really important playing music, nice and smooth, you know. So I kind of equate that with warming up, transition between single strokes, double strokes, triple strokes, 4 strokes. That's the tricky thing. So instead of, before you go out on stage, think, wow, I've got to warm up. Wow, okay, here we go. Wow. That won't do you any good at all. It's going to make you very tense. It won't help. So this is what I do. I do it quite slowly, but very deliberate and very even, and almost with a groove, if at a stretch, like this. I try to make those 2 sticks sound like one. They'll always sound different. You've got 2 sticks which are made of wood, they'll never be the same. You have 2 hands. They're not made of wood, but they do sound different. So that's where I start. And then I will transition into double strokes, like this. Then I'll add 3 strokes. Then I'll add 4 strokes. And I came up with this little exercise, which is a 4-bar motif or exercise. First bar is 16th notes, single strokes. Second bar, double stroke. Third bar, triple stroke. Fourth bar, 4 stroke. But because the third bar is triple strokes, it won't quite pan out. You have a spare quarter note left, 16th note left of that bar. That's when I start the 4 stroke. So it's like 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, like that. And then the end of that bar, you still have another 16th to go, and that's when I put 1 extra 16th in, and then swap it all round, so it starts with the opposite hand you started with. So the first time, let's say I start with the right hand. Here we go. Okay? If you can remember that, it's a great exercise. Now notice I'm not playing that hard, but all my notes are as even as I can get them. Okay? I'm speeding up. I'm finishing that exercise at one tempo because, I don't know, I just like to play in time. When I'm ready to move on, I'll speed it up and it'll be a new tempo. After I've done that, I'll slow it back down again, etc., etc. Okay? So that's, I think it's a great exercise for transition. You will find it when you get to the threes, and you go to the four stroke, and then go back to the one, you're going to find that tough. Unless, of course, you're already doing this, I don't know. But it's a great exercise. Your hand just doesn't want to do it, you know. Another one I like is parradiddles. Parradiddles are a wonderful rudiment. They're very musical. And this is another thing. When you're a kid, I mean, I never read drum books because I had no patience for them at all. As a result, when I was 12, 13 years old, playing professionally, reading charts and playing 4-hour gigs, I still didn't know what a paradiddle was. Believe it or not. I did know what it was, I just didn't know what it was called. You know, so when a drummer from another band said to me, I'm sitting at my drum, said, "Oh, you set up your dad's kit." No, set up my kit. And he came back with a pair of sticks and I said, "Okay then," because he knew the band I was playing in. And he gave me a pair of sticks. "Go on, play me a paradiddle." "What's that?" They went, and he thought I was just, you know. And then the look on his face when we went on stage and played the first number was like, huh? You know. But then, of course, so I was a bit late into the game with learning the rudiments. And mainly because I was more interested in playing music rather than the technique that was going on. So when you're young, you kind of have to make it fun. So the way I try to do it is, and I still do that now. If I'm playing paradiddles, I want to make it musical. I want to make it fun to play. And I'll do all sorts of different permutations and see how convoluted I can get, see if we can still do it, you know. So here's one. 2 single paradiddles, 2 doubles, 2 triples, like this. Well, the first thing that comes to mind is it's not in 4. See if you can tell me what meter it's in. Here's the chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. 9. 9, 4. Wow, that's cool. We've got some boring old rudiments hooked together, and we're in 9/4. That's kind of cool. We've also got a motif, a very, very simple motif, but a motif nonetheless. It goes like this. Okay? So now we can go a couple of ways here. We can continue with our 3 sets of parradiddles and work the speed up like this. Or we can keep it musical and we can start subdividing. Let's subdivide that 9 into 6. 2 against 3. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so now we've got our rudiments, we've got our meter, we've got our little tricky bit of coordination going on, the 6 against the 9. Now let's take that to the kit and the pedals. So you see how much fun that is. We've taken some boring old rudiments and turned it into a whole thing, which is quite challenging because you've got to change your right foot's doing 9, your left foot's doing 6, and then you're turning it around without stopping the parallels. So that's what I mean about being open-minded and coming up with ideas. Another one, which I kind of discovered fairly recently, Swiss triplets. It's like a Tony Williams kind of vibe. It's kind of a flam triplet. It's like... I thought, well, hang on a minute. If we do this... which is 2 beats in each hand. Why don't we start doing 3 beats with one hand? Like this. I'll do it with the left hand, okay? Now the other way around. Now, it doesn't sound very good on the snare drum. That's just a way of figuring out the sticking. But hear what it sounds like on the kit. it's a little tricky to play. But it's really cool. It's this kind of, I don't know, this linear thing. I think it really works, especially when you start playing on different tom-toms, the tonality. You know, I'm kind of still, that's fairly new, I'm kind of working on that at the moment. But whatever you warm up with, it's really important to be relaxed, very loose, and make it feel good. That's the thing. You know, there's one way to play, which is like, it's real choppy and stiff, or nice and relaxed. That's, you know, then I think you're ready to go on stage and play. Okay, any questions? Okay. Well, this side is winning so far. You've got 4 questions to, I think we're about to up to 3 now, because the center line's there. So come on, let's go. Yes, it's really hard to see this, there's no light.
Can you talk a little bit about your hand technique?
About my hand technique?
Yes.
Okay. My hand technique, it's actually really a finger control technique, but it is a technique that's just naturally developed over the years. All I can tell you is that when I hold the stick, it's very, very light indeed. If I'm playing and you came up there and nudged my arms like that, both sticks would go flying. Because I don't really hold on to them very tightly at all. They're very, very loose. I use fingers. A lot of the stroke is the fingers. So and I do this little exercise sometimes. Can you see that? Like there. So it's really this. That's kind of the technique. The hand is very, it moves as well, but you see the action is kind of finger first, then the hand kind of follows. So I think you just, like all these things, you just have to practice slowly and you know, work up to it. But I do let the stick and the drum do a lot of the work. I see a lot of young drummers waste a lot of energy. Their arms are up here, and they're not really getting much of a sound out of the drum because they're choking the drum. I know we're in a very live room, and obviously we only have a tiny little bit of overheads in and a little bit of kick drum, but essentially you're hearing this drum kit pretty much acoustically. But I don't have to hit these very hard, and they just bang, they sing, you know. And a lot of that is the speed with which that stick makes contact, and also the speed with which I lift off. Most of the stroke is actually in the lifting off, you know. It's like ready for the next hit, as it were. So that's really it, and to be as relaxed as possible is always the best way. There's always this tendency to tighten up, get tense, especially if you're in the studio and you're doing a track and, you know, take number 3, take number 4, you know, and then you start playing louder, harder, and stiffer, and it just doesn't feel very good at all. So one of the little tricks to use is to start playing lightly. Lighten up, the groove will come, really will come back. It's quite amazing. So I really advise doing that. We're running out of time, so I'm just going to touch on another subject now. As you know, Drum tuning is very, very live, very, very open, and pretty high.